Melbourne, let me tell you, we actually have an unusual show for you tonight. We have a special report on justice in America and whether Donald Trump will be charged in Georgia for election crimes. That actually remains the one place, the one jurisdiction where he faces the most criminal liability. It's one of our special reports that we've been working hard on as a team, and that's coming up high in tonight's show after our first break. So I wanted to tell you that up front. The question, though, in that special report actually overlaps with the top story tonight. The January 6th committee barreling towards those high-stakes, live, prime-time hearings Thursday. News now breaking about how the Secret Service scrambled to find some way that Donald Trump might have joined what we now know was a march that ended in the criminal breach of the Capitol that day. We're also learning that this hearing will feature testimony by the first Capitol officer injured, as well as new video evidence that appears to blow the lid on a secret militia meeting in an underground parking garage. This was on Insurrection Eve.
Stuart, pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. I'm going to stay close just to make sure my guys are okay.
Okay. And I'm going to
So tomorrow, and I got a lot of stuff to do tomorrow.
That's what the meeting looked like. Both of the individuals you see there are now awaiting their trials for sedition, one of the most serious types of conspiracies on the federal books. We've got a lot going on tonight, as I mentioned, so I'm going to get right to it and bring in our special guests on this busy news week, former U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuade and veteran political strategist and former Obama advisor and aide, Jay Comanduri. Barbara, when you look at that kind of video evidence, what does that mean for the committee making the case that not only was this bad for democracy, which people know, but that it was an organized conspiracy?
I think this really debunks any of those arguments that we've been hearing all along, that this was just ordinary tourists or a crowd that got a little bit out of hand and a little overly enthusiastic in their efforts that day. You know, that at least some of these people were carefully coordinating and organizing. And so I think that rings true in the Oath Keepers indictment and now the Proud Boys indictment for seditious conspiracy. I think the next level investigation has to be whether there was someone organizing even above them to provide funding and other kinds of things. And that's what's so important about these hearings, getting to the bottom of those organized efforts.
Barbara, does it matter that the then president told that same group we just showed there, the Proud Boys, to stand by if he lost the election?
I think that there is certainly an argument to be made that that was a call to action. I don't know that that alone is enough to implicate him criminally. I think he would say, I was just exercising my First Amendment rights. But I also think it is something that is terrorism experts refer to as stochastic terrorism, which is I'm going to say something out in the public domain in hopes that somebody picks up on it and acts on it. It's the same way that ISIS radicalizers get people to take up arms in America against Westerners who are not part of the ISIS ideal. It's the same principle. But tying him criminally on that alone is probably not enough. I think you'd want to see more evidence that he was involved in a cleaner organization of this.
Understood, and understood the precise legal point you're making, which goes to the standards there. Someone can say something horrific. It's not something you'd want to hear from a democratically elected leader with regard to a peaceful transfer of power. But as you remind us, that there's a different standard if you're talking about crimes. Che, you're not here to deal with the sedition conspiracy standards or incitement. You're here to deal with what Congress tries to do in these sort of moments, which is on its best day, use the power and the audience that it has to present something to the nation based on the leaks that we're already seeing. And you know a lot of these people involved at the staff level and otherwise. What do you think is the challenge for this Thursday, and are they stepping up to the plate?
I think they're very much stepping up to the plate. I think the reality is what this committee is going to try to do is present a narrative for the American people to follow and understand. You know, one of the big things that has happened in America over the last year and a half, I would say, is Americans have felt demoralized at basically the sight of seeing Donald Trump get away with one thing after another. The fact that he is not being held accountable for any of his actions time after time has really created a narrative that has been deeply hurtful to America and to American democracy. The idea that he's this MAGA Superman and everything can just bounce off his chest, everything that's thrown off of him. That really goes to this narrative of Donald Trump as this guy that the rules don't apply to me. I enjoy white male privilege at its highest form, and I can offer that to you, my voters. That is a narrative Democrats really have to pierce. And over the last year and a half, it has really hurt Democrats that they look so ineffective, so weak, in some cases, so sort of cowardly. I'm going to be honest about that in terms of how they deal with the former president. They look like people who cannot get things done to the American voters. And this committee is really important in terms of turning around that idea, that image that has done so much to hurt the Biden White House, hurt the Democratic Party, and hurt the United States.
And Che, I'm going to put the question to you that we've discussed with other experts and people who watch The Beat. No, we have a wide range of, we try to have a wide range of experts and views, and people can make up their own mind. We spoke to a lawyer earlier this week about whether the committee should go so far as to state its position by the end, based on the evidence it has, of whether Trump did, in fact, commit a crime or not. We've heard a federal judge discuss that in a non-binding way, as I've emphasized. We've heard plenty of other people discuss it. And we've heard the counter-argument that if they do that, it somehow, quote-unquote, further politicizes the issue. As someone with experience in these matters, do you have a view over whether they should go that far or stop short for some reason?
They should not stop short. I do think that they should go that far. And I think Nancy Pelosi knows it. I think she knows it in the type of people that she has picked to be in this committee. You know, Liz Cheney, Jamie Raskin, Stephanie Murphy. They've all impressed me about one thing. There's one thing that's really important about all of them. None of them seem particularly afraid of Donald Trump. They all seem like that they are designed by Nancy Pelosi to sort of get away from this Marty McFly concept. Democrats don't like confrontations, and really going to like a sort of a Top Gun Maverick concept that they will take the shot. And that is something that's been missing. I mean, this is, you know, beyond this particular committee hearing. We have to look at a narrative of years that have been building up with Mueller, with Alvin Bragg, with the 2 impeachment trials. Trump, time and time again, has evaded accountability for his actions. The one time he was held accountable by voters in November of 2020, he has successfully talked himself out of that. He has convinced the GOP base that, you know, the big lie is true. I actually won that election. He has convinced people of this. And that narrative has to be broken. That is essential for Democrats. That's essential for the country. And, you know, there's no other choice but to say to Donald Trump, you must be held accountable for their actions. And one thing I'll leave you with is something Bill Clinton said. You know, he said, voters will vote for somebody who is strong and wrong over somebody who is weak and right. I think Nancy Pelosi knows that, and I think that's what she's trying to do with this committee.
A classic quote. And to your point, we remember in Back to the Future, Marty McFly had a good heart. I mean, he was the person you'd want to be your friend or family member. But until he stood up for himself, what was it worth, Jay?
Exactly. And that's one of the big things in Back to the Future when his father, played by Chris McGovern, creates the clenched fist and it stands up to Biff, the bully. That's finally when everything kind of turns around. And that's one of the biggest things. You know, bullies keep pushing. And you see Trump is doing that. He has been pushing and pushing American voters, Republican leaders. What can I get away with? How much more outrageous can I get away with this? And, you know, that's what January 6th was kind of the culmination of. Trump is constantly pushing the envelope like a bully to see what he can get away with. And until now, he's been able to get away with a whole lot with not a lot of accountability.
Barbara, I'll give you the final thought here in this block, either on the law or any of the points Che made, or any wisdom you draw from either Back to the Future or its cartoon progeny, Rick and Morty.
Well, I think the most important thing that is left to be disclosed to the American people is Donald Trump's intent. Did he have fraudulent intent? Did he know that he actually lost? Has he ever said that out loud? Is there sufficient evidence to prove that? And I think that is the smoking gun evidence that I'm going to be looking for, both in January 6th and in any criminal charges that the Justice Department is able to put together. There's certainly plenty of circumstantial evidence that many people told him so, from William Barr to his cybersecurity director to 60 different judges. There's circumstantial evidence, but is there direct evidence where he ever said out loud, I know I lost, but I'm just going to say I won?
All fair. Final question to Che on a lighter note. What is the better sequel, the Western one or the future one?
I actually am a big fan of the Western one. I think that that's actually a very clever movie and very underrated. I think the future one, Robert Zemeckis did a lot of things that he ended up doing better in some other movies. It's very bold in terms of what it's accomplished, but it's not as strong as a movie as Mary Steenburgen, a terrific actress. They're all terrific in the Western one, Back to the Future 3.
I think you both made important points. We're also now considering what's more intense, being a legal nerd or a film nerd. But we don't have to pick sides tonight. We'll leave that an open question. Barbara and Shay, thanks for kicking us off here. We've got a lot of news